Anger, the face of darkness. Have you ever noticed how, in moments of anger, your own face seems to lose its light? There's something almost tangible that shifts, not just in your expression, but in the energy that surrounds you. The warmth in your eyes dims. The softness in your voice sharpens into an edge. And even if you try to smile, there's a tension that betrays what's really happening inside. It's as if anger casts a shadow over the light that naturally lives within us. I want to share a story with you, one that might feel familiar. There was a person, someone everyone described as cheerful and kind-hearted, the kind of person whose laughter could lift a room. People felt comforted around them, drawn to the gentle aura they carried. But there was a side of them rarely seen. When they got angry, even over small frustrations, something changed. Their eyes darkened, their voice became harsh, and their presence, usually so comforting, turned heavy. Friends would step back, confused, feeling the sudden shift. This wasn't just about a mood. They were witnessing the moment when anger eclipsed the light inside someone. Buddha once said, "Anger arises from the mind, and when the mind is at peace, anger dissolves like morning dew under the sun." Imagine that for a moment. Anger is not something external or separate from you. It is a reflection of the turbulence inside your mind. When we allow our mind to be stirred by every irritation, every sense of injustice, we are essentially letting our inner darkness take center stage. But when the mind is grounded, calm, and aware, anger has no stage. It simply fades, leaving the natural clarity and warmth of our being untouched. Consider this. Every time anger surfaces, it's like a mask descending over your face. But unlike a literal mask, it doesn't just hide your features, it hides your essence. Your capacity for kindness, patience, and compassion becomes muted. Your thoughts sharpen into criticisms, your voice may wound, and the smallest triggers can feel amplified into mountains of resentment. Have you noticed this in yourself? How a single irritation, someone cutting in line, a harsh word from a loved one, an unexpected setback, can make the world seem darker than it really is? That darkness isn't around you, it's in you. Anger is also strangely seductive. There's a sense of control, even power, that comes when you let it take over. But this is an illusion. The true power lies in awareness. The power to observe anger without being consumed by it. To notice the rising heat in your chest, the tightening in your jaw, the hardening of your gaze, and to breathe, to pause, and to step back. In those moments, you reclaim your light. You remind yourself, I am not my anger. My anger is a visitor. I remember a time when I witnessed this very transformation in someone close to me. They had just faced a sudden, frustrating challenge at work. At first, the frustration flared into sharp words, a tense jaw, and a voice that carried far more bite than intended. It was uncomfortable to be around. But then, almost imperceptibly, something shifted. They noticed their own anger, took a breath, and in that simple act of awareness, the heaviness in the room lifted. Their eyes softened, the sharp edge in their voice smoothed, and laughter, a real, warm laugh, returned. It was a small, yet profound reminder. Anger does not have to define us. Our awareness can. Anger is, in a sense, the face of our own internal darkness. But it is not permanent. It does not reflect who we truly are. It is temporary, a signal, a teacher if we are willing to learn. It shows us where our attachments are, where our expectations clash with reality, where our sense of self feels threatened. And the more we resist or deny it, the more it lingers, until it begins to color every interaction, every thought, every glance. Yet, if we approach anger with curiosity and mindfulness, it becomes a mirror. It reveals the areas within ourselves that need attention, care, and understanding. So, I invite you to try this today. The next time anger rises, notice it. Don't suppress it, don't judge it. Simply observe it as you would a storm passing across the sky. Watch the tension in your face, the clenching in your body, the racing thoughts. And then, gently, allow yourself to breathe. Let the storm move through you without leaving permanent marks. Ask yourself, what is this anger trying to teach me? What part of me feels threatened or unseen? By observing our anger, we begin to take back control, not over others, but over ourselves. We discover that the darkness we fear is not an external force. It is a reflection of our own internal turbulence. And the more we practice this, the less we allow anger to define our interactions, our days, and our lives. As we close this first reflection, I want to leave you with a simple thought. Notice the face of anger when it arises in you. See how it dims your inner light. But also remember, this is not your permanent state. There is always a way back to clarity, warmth, and peace. And in our next conversation, we will explore how to see through anger before it sees through you, how to catch it in the moment and transform it, rather than being swept away by it. Anger is temporary. Awareness is lasting. And in that awareness, your light can shine through, even in the darkest moments. The flame in the eyes. Have you ever caught yourself staring into someone's eyes and felt a sudden chill? Not because they looked sad, not because they seemed tired, but because there was fire there. A fire that didn't warm, it burned. That fire is anger, and it's speaking to the world long before any words leave your mouth. Each time anger rises within you, your eyes are the first messengers. They reveal the storm brewing inside, sometimes louder than any shout, sometimes sharper than any sharp word. Imagine a workplace scenario. A manager is upset. Maybe a project went wrong, maybe deadlines slipped, or perhaps they simply had a stressful morning. Instead of pausing and addressing the situation with calm, they lash out. Their eyes flare with anger, their voice cuts through the room like a blade, and the energy in the space changes instantly. Employees shrink in their chairs, hesitant to speak, hesitant to even breathe. Fear replaces trust. Respect becomes compliance. The connection that might have been nurtured over months evaporates in minutes. One glance, one tone, and a room that could have been collaborative becomes tense and silent. This is the power of the eyes when anger takes over. Buddha taught that a calm mind creates light in the eyes, while anger casts shadows. Think about that. The eyes are mirrors, not just of what we see, but of what we carry inside. When your mind is calm, your gaze invites trust, warmth, and understanding. But when anger dominates, your eyes become the flames of destruction, burning bridges, harming relationships, and silently communicating hostility before a single word is spoken. I remember observing this firsthand in a team I once worked with. There was a leader, highly skilled and deeply knowledgeable, but often quick to frustration. On one particular day, a minor mistake was made during a presentation. Instead of guiding the team calmly, he glared at the person responsible. His eyes flashed with fury, and even without raising his voice, everyone in the room felt the weight. That day, the team's dynamic shifted. People became cautious, less open, less willing to contribute ideas. The spark that once ignited creativity was replaced by a silent, pervasive tension. That single instance of unmindful anger demonstrated the truth of Buddha's teaching. Anger not only darkens your inner self, but also the perception of everyone around you. Here's something to ponder. Have you ever left a conversation feeling uneasy, unsettled, or even scared, not because of what was said, but because of how it was said? More often than not, it is the eyes, the subtle expressions, the invisible weight of anger that communicates the message. The eyes do not lie. They carry the fingerprints of your inner world. And the remarkable thing is, just as anger can ignite darkness in your gaze, mindfulness and peace can bring warmth, clarity, and even joy. It's also fascinating to notice how anger in the eyes affects not only others but yourself. When your own gaze is sharp with fury, the muscles in your face tighten, your heart rate rises, and your entire perception narrows. You stop seeing possibilities, you stop seeing others fully, you see only what angers you. This is why cultivating a calm mind is not merely about being nice or polite. It is about reclaiming the full spectrum of your human experience, the ability to interact without the distortions that anger brings. One practical exercise to try is simple but powerful. The next time you feel irritation or anger rising, take a moment to observe your eyes in a mirror. Don't judge them. Don't scold yourself for feeling anger. Simply notice, what is the story in my gaze? Is there tension? Sharpness? Fear? Then, consciously soften your eyes. Breathe. Allow the light of awareness to return. You might notice the instant shift, not just in your expression, but in your mood, in your body, and even in your ability to respond more skillfully. It's a small practice, yet over time, it reshapes not only how others perceive you, but how you perceive yourself. Anger is often thought of as something external, a reaction to someone else's words, actions, or mistakes. But the eyes remind us otherwise. They are evidence that anger is internal. It is born within, and it is up to us whether it will be expressed with wisdom or impulsivity. Mindfulness is the tool that allows us to intervene, to notice the first sparks of anger before they explode into destructive flames. Imagine if that manager in the earlier story had paused for even a single breath. Imagine if they had noticed the rising tension, softened their gaze, and responded with presence instead of fury. The energy in the room could have remained collaborative, creative, and respectful. The outcome of that moment, both in productivity and in human connection, would have been completely different. So, I invite you to take this to heart. Your eyes are not just windows to your soul, they are also mirrors for your mind. When anger arises, it will be visible there, long before it shapes your words or actions. If you can learn to see it early, to recognize that flame before it spreads, you gain immense power. Not power over others, but power over yourself. The power to choose how to respond. The power to reclaim clarity and warmth. And the power to prevent the ripple effects of anger from touching those around you. As we close this reflection, consider the question: the next time you notice anger in someone else, or even in yourself, what will you do? Will you let the fire spread unchecked? Or will you meet it with awareness, pause, and calm? How might your relationships, your work, and your life change if the light of your eyes reflected peace rather than fury? In the next segment, we will explore practical ways to recognize anger the moment it arises, before it escapes into the world. We will learn how to notice that first spark, that subtle tension in the chest or the flicker in the eyes, and respond with mindfulness instead of reaction. Because the truth is, the earlier you intervene, the less damage anger can do, not just to others, but to your own inner world. Remember, the eyes are powerful. They are the flame that can either illuminate or burn. And with awareness, that flame can become a light that guides, heals, and connects, rather than destroys. When words cut the light. Have you ever said something in anger, and immediately wished you could take it back? One of the most powerful things we can do, both to hurt and to heal, is speak. Words have the remarkable ability to illuminate, to inspire, and to connect. But they also have the devastating power to wound, to darken, and to fracture even the closest bonds. In a single sentence, anger can extinguish the light that radiates from our hearts, leaving behind a shadow that lingers far longer than the initial moment. Let me share a story with you, one that may feel familiar. A friend of mine, someone I trusted deeply, once snapped in a moment of frustration. They didn't intend to harm, at least not consciously. Yet, the words that escaped their lips were sharp, cutting through the warmth that had defined our connection for years. 4 days after, the energy between us shifted. I felt a wall rise where once there had been openness. Conversations became cautious. Laughter became tentative. That one moment of unmindful speech created ripples that extended far beyond the immediate exchange. It was a quiet, but powerful reminder. Words, when born from anger, can darken not only our face but also the hearts of those who hear them. Buddha's teaching on this is simple yet profound. Before you speak, be silent and take a deep breath. Words spoken in anger dim the face and cloud the mind. Imagine that for a moment. The very act of pausing, of simply breathing before responding, holds the potential to preserve light in your expression and warmth in your heart. Without that pause, words become weapons, even when we don't intend them to be. They cut, they wound, and they plant seeds of mistrust and pain that may take a long time, or may never fully heal. Consider this question. How often have we all said something in a fleeting moment of irritation and immediately regretted it? Perhaps a harsh critique to a colleague, a sharp retort to a loved one, or a frustrated comment to a stranger. In that instant, the words feel justified, our emotions validated, but the aftermath tells a different story. Eyes that once trusted us now hold caution. Smiles that welcomed us now hesitate. And the connection we may have taken years to build can wobble on its foundation. This is the unseen impact of anger-fueled speech. Words, like sparks, can ignite either destruction or illumination. If anger is allowed to dominate, they become sparks that start fires we cannot control. But if we introduce mindfulness, awareness, reflection, and presence, those same words can become bridges, moments of clarity, or even gentle truth. The difference is subtle, but immense. One breath, one moment of awareness, can transform what would have been a wound into a doorway for understanding and compassion. I remember practicing this with someone very close to me. We had a disagreement, and I felt the familiar heat of irritation rising. My instinct was to react sharply, to let the words flow freely without restraint. But I paused. I took a deep breath. I reminded myself that my words could either harm or heal. And when I finally spoke, I chose clarity and gentleness instead of accusation and blame. The shift was immediate. The tension in the room eased, the conversation stayed connected, and our bond grew stronger, not weaker. That day, I understood that the pause, the deep breath before speaking, was not weakness. It was strength. It was wisdom in action. Here's an interesting perspective. Anger in words often reflects an inner turbulence we haven't yet acknowledged. Sometimes we speak sharply not because the other person deserves it, but because our own expectations, fears, or frustrations demand release. The words themselves are only the surface of a deeper current. And when we learn to recognize that current, the rising heat, the tension in the chest, the tightening of the jaw, we gain the ability to intervene. Not to suppress, not to ignore, but to respond with awareness. Imagine a simple technique to practice this. The next time irritation rises, notice the first urge to speak. Pause. Inhale deeply. Feel the body, the heart, the rising heat of anger. Then, ask yourself, do these words serve connection or destruction? Do they preserve light or cast shadow? This moment of reflection is your chance to keep the light shining, not just on your face, but in your heart and in the hearts of those who hear you. The words you choose become carriers of presence, calm, and care. Anger-fueled speech can ripple far beyond the immediate moment. One harsh word can echo in someone's mind for days, subtly altering their perception of you, the relationship, and even themselves. Conversely, mindful speech can heal, inspire, and build trust in ways that extend far longer than a casual conversation. This is why the practice of mindfulness in speech is not merely etiquette or self-control. It is a profound act of responsibility and compassion. It reflects the understanding that our inner state shows itself in our eyes, our tone, and our words. If we nurture peace within, that peace will be evident externally. If we cultivate awareness, the light in our face will shine, even amidst challenges. So, I invite you to take a moment and reflect. The next time you feel anger rising, how will you speak? Will you allow the words to cut and cast shadows? Or will you pause, breathe, and speak with awareness? What relationships could be preserved, strengthened, or even deepened if you practice this consistently? As we close this reflection, remember Buddha's guidance. The light within you is fragile, yet resilient. It is easily dimmed by careless words, yet effortlessly restored through mindfulness. In the next segment, we will explore a practical technique, a simple, accessible exercise, to keep the light on your face even in moments of anger, to maintain clarity and warmth in your presence, and to ensure that your speech uplifts rather than harms. Because in the end, words are not just expressions, they are reflections of your inner world. And the brighter that inner world, the more light you can bring into the lives of others. Breathing back to the light. Have you ever noticed how your body responds when anger rises? The chest tightens, the jaw clenches, the hands might tremble ever so slightly, and the breath, our most faithful companion, suddenly becomes shallow, rapid, almost jagged. In those moments, it feels as though the world is closing in, as if every irritation or offense looms larger than life. And yet, there is a simple, powerful tool that almost everyone carries with them at all times: the breath. Let me share a story. A meditation practitioner I once met was facing a deeply frustrating situation. Someone close had said something hurtful, and at first, the irritation flared up immediately. The familiar rush of anger swept through the body, creating tension, a feeling of heat in the chest, and a sense that everything around was suddenly an enemy. But instead of reacting, this practitioner paused and turned their attention inward, to their breath. They noticed its rhythm, observed how shallow it had become, and consciously began to slow it down. With each deliberate inhale and exhale, the body relaxed, the heart rate slowed, and the mind started to settle. Within moments, the anger that had seemed overwhelming transformed into a calm clarity. Their face, once tense and rigid, softened. The light returned. This is the essence of what the Buddha teaches. The mind and body are deeply intertwined, and the breath is the bridge between the two. When we are consumed by anger, our breath mirrors that storm. When we slow the breath, we soothe the mind. It's as if each mindful inhale draws in clarity, and each conscious exhale releases tension. The fire of anger loses its intensity, replaced by the warmth of awareness and presence. Consider this question. How often do we react before noticing our own breath? How often do we let a moment of irritation spiral into a full-blown argument simply because we didn't pause? By returning to the breath, we create a space between stimulus and reaction, a space where choice, not impulse, governs our actions. This small practice is deceptively simple but profoundly transformative. I have practiced this myself, in situations both large and small. On one particularly stressful day, a close friend said something that could have triggered hours of argument. I felt the familiar surge of irritation rise, and for a split second, I considered responding sharply. But then I remembered, breathe. I drew in a slow, steady breath, held it briefly, and exhaled with intention. The physical act of slowing the breath created mental space. I was able to respond calmly, with clarity and compassion, instead of lashing out. What could have been a moment of disconnection became a moment of understanding. This is the power of returning to the breath. It not only transforms anger internally, but also shapes the quality of our interactions. Think about the ripple effects. When your mind settles and your body relaxes, your presence changes. People notice. Your eyes soften, your voice steadies, and even subtle facial expressions communicate openness rather than hostility. The light that anger dims in an instant can return just as quickly when we consciously breathe. It's almost magical, and yet it is deeply practical. It's also worth noting that the breath does more than calm immediate anger. It reshapes our relationship with ourselves. Regular practice of mindful breathing strengthens awareness, making it easier to notice anger as it first arises, rather than only after it has taken over. Over time, the mind begins to recognize the early signs of agitation, a quickened heartbeat, tension in the shoulders, a tightening in the chest. When these signs appear, the breath becomes a natural cue to return to presence, to slow down, and to restore the light in our expression. Let's consider a simple exercise you can try right now, wherever you are. Close your eyes if it's safe to do so. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose, feeling your lungs expand. Hold it for a brief moment, then exhale slowly through your mouth, allowing tension to release. Repeat this several times, noticing how your body relaxes, how your mind begins to quiet, and how your facial muscles soften. Even in moments of subtle irritation, this practice can prevent anger from escalating and preserve the warmth and clarity of your gaze. One fascinating insight is how interconnected our internal state and external relationships truly are. When your mind is calm, your breath steady, and your face luminous with awareness, it radiates outwards. Those around you feel it. Conversations become easier, conflicts are less likely to escalate, and the quality of connection improves naturally. The inner light, the calm, mindful presence, acts like a magnet, inviting trust, warmth, and understanding. Conversely, when anger dominates, even before words are spoken, the tension is felt and relationships suffer. So, I invite you to try this intentionally. The next time irritation or anger arises, pause. Observe the breath. Slow it down. Let the exhale carry away tension, the inhale bringing clarity. Notice the shift in your body, your mind, your eyes, and your expression. This is not about suppressing emotion or pretending to be calm. It is about creating a space where choice and awareness guide your actions, preserving the light within you even in the midst of challenging moments. As we close this reflection, remember, anger is natural, but it does not have to define the moment. With mindful breathing, we reclaim the light in our face and the clarity in our mind. We create an opportunity to respond rather than react, to connect rather than alienate. And in the next segment, we will explore how this inner light, nurtured through awareness and breath, radiates outward, shaping our relationships, our presence, and the quality of life we share with those around us. The practice is simple, yet profound. Breathe. Return to the body. Soften the gaze. Restore the light. And watch how even a single conscious breath can transform anger into peace, shadow into illumination, and tension into warmth. Anger destroys connection. Have you ever felt a moment of anger create distance between you and someone you deeply care about? Not just a fleeting irritation, but a real, palpable separation that seems to widen the space between hearts. Anger does more than darken our face or tighten our voice. It clouds our emotional perception, dims empathy, and quietly builds walls where bridges could have been. In other words, anger doesn't just affect us internally, it shapes the quality of our connections. Let me share a story. There was a couple I knew, married for several years. On the surface, they seemed happy, ordinary, much like many of us. But behind closed doors, arguments were frequent. Sometimes over small things, a misplaced key, a forgotten chore, a misread tone in a conversation. Each quarrel left a mark, invisible at first, but cumulative over time. Every flash of anger was like a semi-transparent curtain descending between them, gradually making it harder to see, to hear, to feel the love that had once been so clear. Their faces would harden, their eyes would darken, and the warmth that usually filled the room would retreat, replaced by tension and distance. What is striking, and what Buddha teaches, is that the mind is the root of this dynamic. A bright mind creates connection, a dark mind creates distance. Think about that. Every moment of irritation, every unchecked flare of anger, has the power to cloud perception. We may speak harshly, react defensively, or shut down emotionally, and in doing so, we place invisible barriers between ourselves and those we care about. It's as if the heart and mind are fogged, and connection becomes a struggle instead of a natural flow. Have you noticed this in your own life? Perhaps a friend or family member said something careless, and your immediate reaction was sharp or defensive. In that instant, even if you later apologized, something subtle shifted. Trust wavered, openness dimmed, and the ease of connection was harder to restore. This is not a flaw in the relationship. It is the natural effect of anger unrecognized and unmanaged. It doesn't only hurt others, it hurts ourselves too, because we are trapped in the tension we've created. Anger is seductive in its intensity. It makes us feel justified, powerful, even alive in a certain way. But it is deceptive. It promises clarity, yet clouds perception. It promises control, yet distances us from the very people we care about. And yet, the solution is elegantly simple, though not always easy. Cultivate awareness. Notice the first stirrings of irritation. Observe the tightening of the chest, the clenching of the jaw, the quickening of the breath. Recognize that this is a signal, not a command. Anger is a message that the mind is reacting, but it is not an order to act destructively. I recall a couple I met in a meditation workshop. They were struggling with repeated arguments, each leaving them frustrated and distant. As part of their practice, they began to pause during these moments of rising tension. They would take a breath, notice the anger without judgment, and reflect on the underlying need or fear behind it. Gradually, instead of escalating, the arguments became opportunities for dialogue. The curtain of anger lifted slightly each time, revealing glimpses of understanding, compassion, and empathy. Over months, what had once been a pattern of distance transformed into a habit of mindful connection. Think about the ripple effect of this. When anger dominates a moment, it doesn't just impact the people directly involved. It changes the energy in a room, the mood of a household, the tone of interactions for hours or even days. By managing anger, by transforming it into insight, we protect the emotional climate we inhabit and influence. We cultivate a space where trust can thrive, where conversations can be honest without being destructive, and where love can remain visible even amid challenges. It's also essential to recognize that transforming anger is not about suppressing emotion or pretending everything is fine. Anger is a natural human response. It signals unmet needs, boundaries crossed, or expectations unfulfilled. The question is how we engage with it. Do we let it dominate our perception and speech, or do we approach it with awareness and compassion? Mindfulness allows us to observe anger, to understand its origins, and to channel its energy into clarity rather than destruction. Here's a practical approach you can try in your own life. When you notice irritation rising, pause. Breathe deeply. Reflect silently. What is this anger really about? What fear, hurt, or expectation is beneath it? Then, choose your response deliberately, whether that means speaking gently, taking a moment before addressing the issue, or simply allowing space for yourself and the other person. Over time, this practice strengthens emotional resilience and preserves the connections that matter most. One powerful insight from Buddhist practice is that the quality of our relationships mirrors the quality of our mind. When our minds are clear and bright, connection flows effortlessly. When our minds are clouded with anger, distance, and misunderstanding grow, often unnoticed until the damage is done. By turning inward, observing, and cultivating awareness, we not only protect our inner light, but we also safeguard the emotional well-being of those around us. So, I invite you to reflect. The next time anger begins to rise, how will you respond? Will you allow it to obscure connection, or will you notice it early, pause, and bring awareness to the moment? How might your interactions, your relationships, and even your own sense of peace shift if you treated anger as a signal rather than a command? As we close this reflection, remember Buddha's wisdom. The mind has the power to build bridges or walls. Each moment of awareness, each pause, each conscious breath can preserve light and deepen connection. Anger may appear naturally, but it does not have to define our relationships. By transforming anger into understanding and empathy, we illuminate not only our own hearts but also the hearts of those we love. In the next segment, we will explore practical ways to cultivate this transformation, how to turn anger into insight, disconnection into understanding, and tension into compassion. Because ultimately, the way we relate to anger shapes not just our internal world, but the entire fabric of our relationships. Transforming anger into empathy. Have you ever noticed that the most difficult moments often carry the greatest potential for growth? Moments when anger surges inside you, when the heart feels hot, the mind tightens, and every instinct screams for reaction. These are the very moments where transformation becomes possible. It sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? That the heat of anger can become a doorway to understanding. But in truth, empathy and insight are often born right in the midst of what feels like emotional chaos. Let me share a story. A teacher I once knew had a student who repeatedly disrupted the class. The natural human reaction, immediate irritation, frustration, even anger, arose in the teacher. His face tightened, his voice could have sharpened, and for a moment, it seemed as though discipline would require a harsh word. But instead, he paused. He inhaled deeply, grounded himself in his breath, and observed his own rising anger. Then, rather than lashing out, he tried something radically simple. He asked himself, what is this student really experiencing? What pain or struggle might be hidden beneath this behavior? In that pause, empathy emerged. The teacher saw beyond the disruption to the child's fear, confusion, or unmet needs. His response shifted, not from judgment, but from understanding. He addressed the behavior with calm authority, combined with compassion. The student, sensing genuine concern rather than anger, responded in kind. Connection was preserved, trust was maintained, and the classroom atmosphere transformed. That single moment demonstrates a profound truth. Empathy is a light that anger cannot obscure. When we cultivate the ability to see other struggles even as our own irritation rises, we redirect the energy of anger into understanding, presence, and connection. This is exactly what the Buddha meant when he taught. Understanding is the light that anger cannot hide. It is not about suppressing anger or denying our feelings. It is about meeting them with awareness, pausing long enough to remember the humanity of both ourselves and the other. Anger signals that something in us or around us feels threatened, misunderstood, or frustrated. But rather than letting it dictate our actions, we can use it as a guide, asking, what is beneath this emotion? What can I learn? How can I respond in a way that preserves light rather than casting shadow? Think about this for a moment. How often does anger blind us to what someone else is experiencing? How many conflicts escalate because we respond from the heat of the moment instead of the clarity of understanding? Empathy requires effort. It requires slowing down, breathing, observing, and sometimes holding space for discomfort. Yet the results are transformative. Relationships flourish, trust deepens, and the energy of anger is redirected into insight, compassion, and emotional intelligence. I've seen this principle play out countless times, not just in classrooms but in everyday life. Imagine a partner snapping at you during a stressful day. The instinct may be to retaliate, to defend, or to withdraw. But if, even for a single breath, you pause and consider their perspective, what fears or pressures may be underlying their words, you create a space where anger can soften. That moment of awareness can turn a potential argument into a meaningful conversation. The light of empathy pierces through the darkness of irritation, and suddenly, connection is preserved rather than fractured. Empathy doesn't require agreement or condoning behavior. It simply requires presence and understanding. By recognizing the emotions behind actions, we see people and situations more fully. The teacher's story illustrates this beautifully. His anger was real, justified even, but he did not let it govern his actions. He chose awareness over reaction, understanding over retaliation. And in doing so, he not only preserved the student's dignity but also nurtured his own inner clarity and calm. Here's a simple practice you can try in your own life. The next time you feel irritation rising, first, pause. Breathe deeply and notice the physical sensations in your body. Then, mentally step into the other person's shoes, asking, what might they be feeling? What fears, needs, or struggles could be underlying this behavior? Let yourself feel compassion for their human experience, even as you honor your own. This does not diminish your boundaries or your feelings. It strengthens them, because your actions now come from clarity, not impulse. It's fascinating to observe how transformative this can be. Anger that once escalated conflicts or left relationships strained now becomes a signal for mindfulness. Each flash of irritation becomes an opportunity to practice presence, to cultivate understanding, and to illuminate the situation with empathy. Over time, this practice rewires the mind. Where anger once dominated, insight now emerges more naturally. Where reactions once caused rupture, responses now foster connection. And consider the ripple effect. When empathy replaces immediate reaction, not only does the relationship improve, but the energy around you shifts. Others sense the presence of calm, thoughtful awareness. Trust grows, conversations deepen, and the emotional climate becomes more nourishing. It's a profound illustration of how inner work, the cultivation of mindfulness and empathy, radiates outward, influencing not just ourselves, but everyone we interact with. Reflect for a moment. What would your interactions look like if anger became your teacher rather than your master? How might relationships deepen if each flash of irritation became an invitation to understand rather than an excuse to react? By transforming anger into empathy, we reclaim the light in our hearts, preserve the warmth in our connections, and create a space where both ourselves and others can thrive. As we close this reflection, remember Buddha's wisdom. The light within you cannot be fully hidden by anger. When you pause, breathe, and cultivate understanding, you turn a potential moment of darkness into illumination. You show that even in the heat of frustration, awareness and compassion can prevail. In the next segment, we will explore practical strategies for maintaining this inner light even when the world seems to conspire against it. How to stay luminous, grounded, and connected, no matter the challenges around you. The practice is simple yet profound. Pause, breathe, observe, empathize. In doing so, anger transforms from a destructive force into a teacher, revealing insight, nurturing connection, and preserving the light within. Each conscious response is a step toward mastery over the mind, heart, and the quality of the life we share with others. Maintaining your inner light amid adversity. Have you ever faced a moment when it feels like the world is crumbling around you? Perhaps it's a sudden job loss, an unexpected betrayal, or a personal setback that shakes the very ground beneath your feet. In those moments, it is natural for anger, fear, or despair to arise. But here's the question worth pausing over. When everything seems to be falling apart, does your face still carry light? Does your mind still hold a spark of clarity, even amid chaos? Let me tell you a story. I once met a man who had just lost his job, a role he had poured years of dedication into, a role that had given him both identity and purpose. Most people would feel an immediate surge of anger, frustration, perhaps even bitterness toward the company, the world, or themselves. But this man, in his first hours of shock, did something remarkable. He paused. He allowed himself to feel disappointment, yes, but he refused to let it govern his actions or obscure his awareness. He took deliberate breaths, observed his thoughts and emotions without judgment, and reminded himself that while anger is a natural response, it doesn't have to define his moment, his choices, or his presence. The Buddha teaches that anger is indeed a natural reaction, a reflex of the mind when expectations are thwarted or the world challenges us. But he also reminds us that the light within is not lost simply because external circumstances are difficult. It can be maintained, nurtured, and even strengthened through mindfulness and conscious attention. When we notice anger, we can acknowledge it without surrendering to it. We can witness it, understand it, and let it pass through us rather than consuming us. Consider this. When a setback occurs, it often triggers layers of internal narratives. Why me? This isn't fair. I've worked so hard. These thoughts intensify the emotional storm, and our initial reaction of anger or frustration can easily dominate our perception. But mindfulness provides a way to step back. By observing the mind, we create a space between stimulus and response, a space where the inner light, the calm clarity of awareness, can persist even when outer circumstances are turbulent. I remember speaking with this man weeks later. He described how, in the days following his job loss, he practiced simple mindfulness exercises, pausing before reacting to anxiety or frustration, focusing on his breath, and reminding himself that his value and peace were not contingent on his employment status. He noticed that even when he felt anger rising, it did not automatically erupt outward. Instead, he could acknowledge it, learn from it, and redirect his energy toward constructive action, updating his resume, reaching out to contacts, and exploring opportunities he had never considered before. His internal light guided him through adversity, keeping him centered and present, and ultimately allowed him to emerge not only resilient but also more self-aware and compassionate. This story illustrates a profound truth. Adversity will always challenge us, but it does not have to extinguish the light within. The mind has a remarkable capacity to maintain clarity, compassion, and equanimity even when the outer world is unstable. Each moment of awareness, each pause before reaction, each conscious breath, becomes a thread that strengthens the fabric of our inner stability. Anger, frustration, and fear are signals. They are part of the human experience, but they are not the enemy. They are messages, guiding us to examine our thoughts, our expectations, and our attachments. Ask yourself, how often have you let anger take control during difficult times, only to later regret the words spoken or decisions made? How might life change if, at the first stirrings of irritation or frustration, you simply paused, observed, and allowed clarity to guide your actions? By maintaining the light within, even in the darkest circumstances, you preserve the power to respond wisely rather than react impulsively, to create rather than destroy, to connect rather than alienate. It's also important to recognize that maintaining light amid adversity does not mean suppressing emotions. Acknowledging anger, sadness, or disappointment is vital for emotional health. The difference is in how we engage with these emotions. Do we allow them to consume us, dictate our behavior, and cloud our relationships? Or do we use them as a signal to pause, reflect, and act with awareness? Mindfulness transforms these emotions from potential destroyers into teachers, revealing insights about our attachments, expectations, and inner strengths. In practical terms, here's a method you can try during challenging moments. When you feel the surge of anger or frustration, pause. Take a deep, conscious breath. Notice the sensations in your body, the tightness, the heat, the tension. Name the emotion silently. This is anger. This is disappointment. Then, direct your attention to the breath, letting it anchor you in the present moment. Ask yourself, how can I respond with clarity, rather than react from impulse? How can I preserve my inner light, even as the world challenges me? Over time, this practice builds resilience, fortifies emotional stability, and preserves the clarity and warmth in your interactions. The ripple effects are profound. When your inner light remains intact, you radiate calm and presence to those around you. Conversations during stressful times are less likely to escalate. Conflicts are approached with clarity rather than reactivity. Relationships are preserved, and even in challenging circumstances, the quality of your interactions and the energy you carry remains grounded and nurturing. The inner light acts like a lighthouse, guiding both yourself and others safely through the storm. Reflect for a moment. Imagine facing life's inevitable setbacks, personal loss, professional challenges, or relational difficulties, with this inner light intact. What would it feel like to respond to frustration not with anger, but with awareness? To preserve clarity when fear or resentment rises? To maintain a calm and luminous presence even when the world seems to conspire against you? These are not distant ideals. They are possible through consistent mindfulness, self-awareness, and the conscious cultivation of inner light. As we close this reflection, remember Buddha's guidance. Anger is a natural reaction, but it does not have to extinguish your light. The mind, when observed with clarity, can maintain its radiance even amid adversity. Each pause, each mindful breath, each conscious choice reinforces this inner light, allowing you to navigate life's challenges with wisdom, compassion, and resilience. In the next segment, we will explore how to recognize anger as a signal, rather than an enemy, a message from within that invites awareness, understanding, and conscious response. Because when we shift our perspective on anger, we transform not only our own experience, but also the way we relate to the world around us. The practice is simple yet profound. Breathe, observe, choose awareness. In doing so, even as external circumstances fluctuate, your inner light remains steady, a beacon of clarity, calm, and connection that no adversity can fully diminish. Anger as a signal. Have you ever noticed that when anger arises, it often feels like an intruder, a sudden storm that disrupts your mind, your body, and even the people around you? Many of us instinctively see anger as an enemy, a force to suppress, resist, or fight. But what if we approached it differently? What if anger were not the enemy, but a messenger, a signal from within, calling for our attention and awareness? Let me share a story. There was a successful entrepreneur, someone driven and ambitious, managing multiple projects and a growing team. On the surface, life looked ideal: financial stability, recognition, progress. Yet, beneath that exterior, pressure was mounting. Deadlines, team dynamics, and personal expectations created a simmering tension. One afternoon, a small issue, a missed report from an employee, triggered a sudden flash of anger. His face flushed, his chest tightened, and for a brief moment, It felt like the world had turned against him. At first, his reaction was the usual one: frustration, scolding, a sharp tone meant to correct the situation. But then he paused. He reflected, why am I reacting so strongly? What is really happening here? Slowly, he realized that the anger wasn't about the employee or even the report. It was a signal that he himself was under pressure, stressed beyond his usual limits, and neglecting his own well-being. This insight was transformative. The anger became a guide, pointing him toward a deeper awareness of his own limits and needs, rather than a weapon to vent on someone else. The Buddha teaches that emotions, including anger, are neither inherently good nor bad. They are signals, reflections of the mind state. When we recognize anger as a signal, we gain clarity. It informs us that something important needs attention, whether that is an unmet expectation, a personal boundary, or accumulated stress. Anger, when observed mindfully, becomes a teacher rather than a destroyer. It can highlight where we are out of balance, where our energy is misaligned, or where we are projecting our frustrations onto others. Think about your own experiences. How often has anger erupted, only for you to realize later that the source was not the person or situation in front of you, but internal stress, fear, or exhaustion? By perceiving anger as a signal, you shift the narrative. Instead of letting it dominate your reactions, you ask yourself, what is this anger trying to tell me? Where am I neglecting my needs, my boundaries, or my awareness? This subtle but profound shift changes the entire landscape of human interaction. Here's an example many can relate to. Imagine a parent overwhelmed by the chaos of a busy household. The child spills juice, knocks over a toy, or refuses to follow instructions. Anger rises. It is easy to see the child as the source of the problem. But with a mindful pause, the parent can observe, this anger is a signal of my own fatigue, impatience, and unmet need for rest or support. In that moment, anger serves as an internal compass, directing attention to self-care, reflection, or a constructive conversation, rather than punishment. The energy of anger is no longer destructive. It becomes informative. Recognizing anger as a signal also allows us to respond more skillfully in professional settings. Returning to our entrepreneur, once he identified the root of his anger as personal stress, he implemented small but powerful changes, scheduling breaks, delegating tasks more mindfully, and checking in with his own emotional state before responding to others. The next time a team member made a mistake, he could respond calmly, address the issue constructively, and maintain trust and respect within his team. The energy of anger, once acknowledged and understood, shifted from disruption to guidance. Ask yourself this: how might your life change if you stopped seeing anger as an adversary and started seeing it as a teacher? Could you prevent arguments from escalating, preserve your relationships, and protect your own emotional well-being? What if every moment of irritation became an opportunity to check in with yourself, to understand what pressures, fears, or unmet needs were triggering it? The process is simple in theory, though it requires practice. When anger arises, pause, breathe, observe the sensation without judgment. Ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Is it pointing to an external situation or to something within myself? Then, choose how to respond. This moment of reflection transforms the experience. Instead of being a reactive storm, anger becomes a map, a guidepost showing you where attention is needed. This approach also transforms our relationships. When we respond with awareness rather than reflexive anger, we create space for understanding, dialogue, and empathy. People sense the difference, the pause, the reflection, the absence of harsh reaction. Trust deepens, conflicts are reduced, and connections are strengthened. By interpreting anger as a signal, we not only protect our inner light, but also preserve the light in others, nurturing a relational environment grounded in clarity, respect, and compassion. There's another dimension to consider: the physical and energetic impact of anger. When we react impulsively, our body tenses, our energy contracts, and our presence becomes heavy, even intimidating. When we pause and recognize anger as a signal, the body relaxes slightly, the mind regains clarity, and our energy becomes more balanced. The internal shift, even subtle, influences how we are perceived and how we interact with the world. Mindful awareness transforms both inner and outer experiences. And remember, this is not about suppressing emotion or pretending anger does not exist. It is about acknowledging it fully, understanding its origin, and using it constructively. Anger is simply a message, a signal of imbalance or unmet need. When we interpret it wisely, we convert potential destruction into insight, fostering both personal growth and relational harmony. Reflect. The next time you feel anger rising, consider it an internal signal rather than a threat. Pause. Observe. Ask, what is this trying to tell me? How can I respond with clarity rather than reactivity? With each mindful response, you build emotional resilience, preserve your inner light, and create space for empathy, understanding, and connection. As we prepare to move to the next segment, consider this. Anger, when properly understood, is a guide. It can illuminate our boundaries, highlight our stress, and reveal unmet needs. By seeing anger as a signal rather than an enemy, we transform it from a force that divides and destroys into a teacher that illuminates, guides, and empowers. In the next part, we will explore practical methods to replenish the energy of your face and soul after anger, to restore light, calm, and presence, so that even after conflict, your inner radiance continues to shine. Because ultimately, how we respond to anger shapes not only our emotional landscape, but also the quality of our relationships and the depth of our presence in the world. Recharging your inner light. Have you ever noticed how after a moment of anger, your face seems heavier, your shoulders tense, and your energy feels drained? That surge of emotion leaves a shadow not just in your mind, but across your expression, your posture, even the way you move through the world. The question is, after the storm passes, how do you bring your light back? How do you restore presence, warmth, and calm, not only within yourself but also in the way you connect with others? Let me share a story. There was a woman who had been caught in a tense meeting at work. Her patience had been stretched, and a colleague's careless words triggered a wave of anger that she could almost feel radiating from her face. Later that day, alone at her desk, she realized something important. She couldn't just wait for the tension to fade. She needed to actively bring her inner light back. So, she practiced a small, deliberate meditation, one that involved focusing on her breath, softening her expression, and intentionally allowing a gentle smile to form. At first, it felt almost strange. How could smiling after anger feel natural? But slowly, she noticed a subtle shift. Her breath slowed, her body loosened, and a warmth spread from her chest outward. The smile was not for anyone else. It was a signal to herself, a gentle reminder that light and calm are always accessible, even after anger. And as she maintained that awareness, she began to feel a shift in her thoughts. Irritation softened, frustration receded, and clarity returned. The Buddha teaches that the mind and heart can be restored through intentional cultivation of positive energy. Anger, though natural, leaves an imprint. It dims the inner light, obscures clarity, and disrupts connection. But light is not lost forever. It can be recharged through mindful practices, conscious gestures, and deliberate attention to the present. Even something as simple as a heartfelt smile can act as a bridge, reconnecting us to our own awareness and radiating warmth to those around us. Imagine the energy of a genuine smile. It is not superficial. It is a subtle but powerful act that communicates openness, presence, and reconciliation. Psychologists and neuroscientists have observed that even forced smiles can influence the brain, releasing tension and encouraging a more positive emotional state. Now imagine a smile that emerges not from obligation, but from awareness and intentionality. That is the kind of smile that recharges light in the aftermath of anger, one that restores both internal balance and relational harmony. Consider this practice. After a conflict, before responding, pause. Take a few deep, conscious breaths. Let your shoulders relax, soften the jaw, and allow your face to naturally lift into a gentle smile. Visualize light radiating from your heart, filling your chest, and extending outward to your surroundings. You might imagine sending warmth, understanding, and compassion to yourself and others, even to those who triggered the anger. This visualization is more than symbolic. It shifts your physiological state, eases tension, and reopens the channels of connection that anger may have closed. Here's another example from daily life. A parent whose child has just had a tantrum. Initially, frustration flares. But by taking a conscious breath, softening the body, and offering a warm, patient expression, the parent not only calms themselves, but also influences the child. The child perceives presence, safety, and connection. The parent's inner light, recharged through mindful awareness and gentle intention, ripples outward, transforming the moment. What was once a scene of tension becomes a shared space for learning, empathy, and presence. It's important to note that recharging light is not about denying feelings. Anger, disappointment, and frustration are valid. They deserve recognition. The practice is about intentional transition, acknowledging the emotion understanding its origin, and then actively guiding your state back to clarity, warmth, and awareness. In essence, it is a conversation with yourself. I honor this feeling. I will not suppress it. Now, I choose to restore balance and light. You might ask, how long should this process take? The beauty of mindfulness and conscious practices is that even a few intentional breaths, coupled with a smile or a mental visualization of positive energy, can begin the process immediately. Over time, these moments accumulate, creating a stronger resilience, a habitual capacity to recover light quickly, and a more consistent presence of calm and clarity in your interactions. The effects extend beyond the individual. Think about the energy we carry into our relationships, workplaces, and communities. When anger subsides but leaves a residue of tension or sharpness, interactions are strained, misunderstandings deepen, and connection suffers. By consciously restoring light, through breath, presence, and genuine expression, we repair not just our inner state, but also the relational environment around us. Our restored energy creates a ripple effect, subtly influencing the tone of conversations, the mood of spaces, and the emotional climate of those around us. Ask yourself, after a difficult conversation or a moment of frustration today, how might you recharge your inner light? Could a few conscious breaths, a gentle smile, and an awareness of your own presence transform not only your state but also the experience of those around you? Could this practice be the bridge that restores warmth, clarity, and connection, even after tension? There's also an aspect of gratitude embedded in this practice. As you restore your inner light, acknowledge the opportunity to grow through the challenge. Recognize that each moment of anger is also a chance to refine awareness, to strengthen mindfulness, and to exercise compassion for yourself and for others. This subtle acknowledgement turns residual energy from frustration into insight, from agitation into calm, and from reaction into conscious action. In practical terms, you might create a short routine to end the day or a stressful encounter. Pause, breathe, soften your expression, smile gently, and visualize light radiating from within. Combine this with a silent affirmation or intention. May my heart be calm. May my mind be clear. May my interactions be guided by presence and understanding. Over time, this practice rewires habitual responses, enabling you to recover your light more quickly, sustain calm amidst chaos, and approach relationships and challenges with greater awareness. The key takeaway is simple, yet profound. Anger dims the light, but light can always be restored. Through mindfulness, conscious expression, and intentional care, we can bring warmth, clarity, and calm back to our face, our heart, and our interactions. A genuine smile, a conscious breath, a moment of presence. These are small actions with enormous impact. They remind us that the mind is resilient, the heart is luminous, and even after the storm, we can shine brightly again. As we conclude this segment, reflect on the journey we've explored together, from recognizing the darkness anger casts on the face, to observing it in the eyes, moderating words, breathing to calm the mind, transforming anger into empathy, maintaining light in adversity, and interpreting anger as a signal. Now, we arrive at the final step, recharging the inner light, restoring presence, and radiating warmth once more. Each phase builds upon the last, creating a comprehensive approach to emotional mastery and relational harmony. In the next, and final, segment, we will summarize this journey from anger to light, reflecting on the transformation of energy, awareness, and connection. We'll also explore how to carry these lessons forward, making the cultivation of inner light not a temporary practice, but a daily way of being, a continual source of clarity, resilience, and presence in every interaction, every decision, and every moment of life. Remember, your inner light is never lost. It may flicker, it may dim, but with awareness, intention, and practice, it can always be reignited. And when it shines, it illuminates not just your own path, but the lives and hearts of those around you. Light restored. Have you ever imagined that anger, that sudden surge of heat in your chest, could be transformed into light? That the tension in your face, the tightness in your shoulders, and the storm in your mind could be shifted into clarity, warmth, and presence? This is not just a poetic idea, it is a practical, transformative path, and today, we are going to bring together everything we've explored in this journey, from recognizing anger, to breathing, to empathy, to calm, and finally, to restoring your inner light. Let's begin with a simple reflection. Think about your face after a moment of anger. Often, it tightens, hardens, and closes off. Your eyes may flash, your jaw may clench, and your energy contracts. But imagine taking a pause. Just a breath. a gentle awareness of what just passed. This pause is the first step in bringing the light back. It is the doorway from reaction to response, from tension to presence. In the previous parts of this series, we've seen how anger is not the enemy, it's a signal. A signal pointing us to unmet needs, accumulated stress, or limits that have been stretched too far. Recognizing anger as a signal allows us to pause, reflect, and choose how to respond. We've explored how a conscious breath slows the body, how observing emotions without judgment softens the heart, and how empathy and understanding can transform reactive energy into compassionate action. Each step has been a layer in the process of restoring light. Now comes the final, unifying practice, the restoration of presence through the energy of the face and heart. One story illustrates this beautifully. A community teacher, after a tense day managing a group of challenging students, found herself drained and frustrated. Her face reflected the day's strain, tight lines, tense jaw, and tired eyes. Instead of letting the energy linger, she practiced what we've discussed, pausing, breathing deeply, softening her expression, and allowing a small, genuine smile to emerge. This smile was not for performance, not for anyone else. It was a conscious gesture to reconnect with her own inner light. Slowly, she felt the tension ease, her heart soften, and a sense of clarity return. This is a practice anyone can do, anywhere, anytime. The Buddha teaches, whoever preserves the light within will not be overcome by darkness. In modern terms, this means that when you consciously maintain awareness and cultivate positive energy, even after anger, you can protect yourself from the lingering shadows of negative emotion. You choose how to move forward, how to interact, and how to influence your environment. Let's reflect on the practical steps. First, recognize anger as it arises. Label it mentally. This is anger. It is a signal. Then, take a pause. A few deep breaths. Feel the air enter. Feel it leave. Notice how your body responds. The chest tightens, the shoulders rise, the mind races, and allow awareness to observe without judgment. Next, introduce empathy. Consider the other person's perspective, or even the context of your own internal state. Why has this anger appeared? What is it trying to tell you? Finally, restore presence. Soften your features, relax your muscles, and allow a gentle, sincere smile to emerge. Imagine the ripple effect. When your inner light returns, your eyes regain clarity, your tone regains warmth, and your presence becomes inviting instead of intimidating. Relationships that may have been strained by tension now have space for understanding. Conversations can flow with more openness, and even subtle gestures, like a relaxed posture or a compassionate glance, can influence the energy around you. Your restored light does not stay confined within. It extends outward, touching those around you, creating a subtle but profound transformation. Consider a real-world example, a couple who had been caught in a cycle of recurring arguments. After practicing these techniques, pausing, breathing, empathizing, and reconnecting with inner light, they began to notice small changes. The moments after disagreements were no longer filled with resentment or tension. They learned to respond rather than react, to see the message behind anger, and to bring warmth back into the interaction. Over time, this practice reshaped not only their relationship but also their own emotional resilience. It is important to remember that restoring light is not a one-time event. It is a continuous process, a way of engaging with life and relationships. The mind naturally drifts, emotions naturally arise, and challenges continue to test our patience. But each time you pause, breathe, observe, empathize, and smile genuinely, you train your mind to recover faster, to shine brighter, and to influence your environment positively. The more consistent this practice, the more naturally light emerges, even in moments of stress or conflict. There's also a deeper insight here. The light you cultivate within yourself enhances your capacity to be present for others. In our modern world, where stress, competition, and constant stimulation can easily erode patience and empathy, the conscious restoration of inner light is revolutionary. It enables you to respond to challenges, setbacks, or provocations with clarity rather than chaos. It turns the energy of anger into insight, connection, and calm. And, most importantly, it reminds us that we are not slaves to our emotional reactions. We can choose how to embody our presence in every moment. Let's explore one more dimension: gratitude and intentionality. After restoring your light, take a moment to acknowledge the opportunity that the anger presented. Reflect, this moment challenged me, but it also taught me awareness, patience, and compassion. This simple acknowledgement transforms the energy of frustration into learning and growth. It is an essential component of sustainable emotional well-being. And finally, think about how this practice can extend beyond your personal sphere. When your inner light is restored, your interactions at work, at home, and in your community are enriched. You model calm, clarity, and empathy. Others sense it and are inspired to mirror it. In this way, personal practice radiates outward, creating a collective shift in the emotional tone of your surroundings. A single restored heart can influence a room, a family, a workplace, or even a community. As we close this chapter of our journey, from recognizing anger, observing its effects, cultivating empathy, maintaining calm, and finally, restoring light, remember this: light is never lost. It may be dimmed, flicker, or shadowed by intense emotions, but it can always be reignited. Each conscious breath, each softening of expression, each intentional smile is a spark. When nurtured, these sparks grow into a steady, enduring flame of awareness, compassion, and presence. The path is both simple and profound. By practicing these steps, you reclaim mastery over your emotional state. You cultivate resilience, deepen connections, and radiate warmth and clarity. The journey from anger to light is a practice of daily life, a practice of mindfulness, presence, and conscious choice. It is a guide not only to emotional balance but also to meaningful, harmonious living. As we transition to the next video, ask yourself this: how can the light I cultivate within me extend outward and illuminate the lives of others? This is the next step, the expansion of inner light, turning personal transformation into a shared, luminous presence in the world. And as you continue this journey, remember, no darkness is permanent. Your light can always return, and when it does, it brightens not just your own path, but the paths of everyone around you. The ultimate teaching is timeless. Whoever preserves the light within will not be overcome by darkness. May you carry this light forward, through challenges and interactions, and may it continue to shine brightly, illuminating both your life and the lives of others.